While Ashura is definitely not the best anime of this Winter 24 anime season, I have to admit, I'm really surprised by how well it's actually developed. This is a show that I thought I kinda knew where it wanted to go early on, and then quickly by episodes 2 and 3 I was like, oh, it's Isekai Battle Royale. That sounds fun. Bunch of characters jumping into a world, competing for a title, big battle spectacle. And instead, over 5 episodes, we got individual character interactions and setup. Each episode usually had about 2 perspectives, give or take. We got to know these characters. Sure, anime community, I saw a lot of criticism. If you look at this show on Reddit, no one talks highly about it. It's a very underappreciated show. But I found that discussions, once you go into different territories, like different, just mini groups talking about it, the show's had some buzz for like a cult following. And I really thought this was going to be a show that was like, oh, here's the individual character interactions, now they're going to kill each other. And instead, with episode 6, now that the introductions are out of the way, characters are now all approaching the same city, they're interacting with each other, and they're still avoiding just mindlessly killing. Next episode feels like a death is coming, mind you, of course. They even tried it in this episode. But it's not a battle royale in the way that you think. And I think it does count as one. You have a lot of people who are going to be fighting to the death, competing for a title at the end of the day. But rather than going in the route of, oh, it's a very predictable, here's 12 characters, one by one they fall down. Instead, what we're looking at is a show that is a pure fantasy. It feels like something pulled from the 90s, if I'm being honest. Like, not visually, but just the way it's going about its storytelling. The fact that I have no idea who's actually the first to fall. There is no predictable element of who's gonna go first. And the fact that there's so many characters in this cast that feel broken, I still think Kia's probably the strongest on paper. But I mean, if you look at episode 5, which we didn't talk about on the channel, I did watch it of course, but episode 5, it also has a character that potentially could be absolutely broken. Like, it's hard to say for sure who's gonna make it out of this and what alliances are gonna be formed, but the fact that we're not going in the predictable path that I think many of us assumed that we could predict, it's something worth praising. Now, I do have full live reactions to both episodes 5 and 6 of that Ashura greatness over on my Patreon. Like I said, I didn't talk about it last week, but we did cover it over there. I was just a little busy. So if you want to see my full and cut thoughts, they're over there if you're interested. We're going to primarily talk about episode 6, because this is like the most interesting out of the two, because now that, like, there's about 3 perspectives, give or take, that we focus on. Like, there's multiple characters per each perspective, but, we see what we see. Episode 1 characters, Sojiro comes back. I mean, I've heard a lot of demand for him pretty much ever since episode 1 finished and we stopped focusing on him. I was of the belief I like seeing all the characters' perspectives, but he was one of the shining stars. It might just be because he was the first character we really saw be badass, so he just made a lasting impression, but I also think he's cool. It's like basically cutting things apart, giant machines, like he's Levi in Attack on Titan without the maneuver gear. He's pretty badass. The idea that we have all these different characters at play, and if you look at, I think it was in episode 4, there was the whole situation with this girl, this blind girl, who it seemed like she was betraying. Because the letter that was basically discovered in that episode was Braille, right? And as far as we can tell, being blind, isn't that common. And if it is, you're in the slums. You probably can't even afford paper. So there's only really one person who could have probably detailed that. But then when you see episode 6, you're like, she's calling this girl mom. Like, this is her adoptive mom. Like, Taryn, she doesn't seem like she would want to betray. And it seems like the impression they want us to have is that what if you kind of guided the blind girl into recording all of her thoughts without realizing it? So, oh, hey, dragon buddy, wyvern buddy, what did you do today? Writes everything. It's just a personal journal. And then that information could easily be sold, stole, or anything like that. It's kind of interesting because Kia and her quote-unquote teacher, she was pretty much trying to take out anyone who knew anything about the words, so that, because basically this needs to be kept as much of a secret as possible, so when the tournament starts up or the fights begin, no one knows how deadly she could potentially be. Tries to kill her, doesn't go over well. I think she realized what was happening. I don't know, she glanced over her shoulder a couple of times in the alleyway, but then by the end of it, she kind of gets kidnapped and is being brought. So now it goes from, okay, either we need to kill her in this wagon before she reaches there, or we need to rescue her and just keep her on her side. It's just like, when you think you know the direction the show's going, they introduce like 3 extra spider's webs that we can follow and find different plot lines. And I guess on paper it seems overwhelming, but I don't find myself feeling overwhelmed in the moment. It's almost like whenever these plot points are the main focus, I'm like, yep, that's the thing I want to focus on. And then they're like, oh, actually, what about this? And what about this? And I'm like, yeah, I want to see that too. The biggest hindrance that this anime is going to have is it's probably going to be a one and done season. We might get lucky and get a season 2, but there's no way in hell this is getting a full adaptation. I would be shocked if it did. I will not be complaining, but I would be shocked. So I think there will be arguments to be made, okay, as good of an adaptation as it is, they didn't just rush into the killing or this or that, but it's going to force you to go read the source material. But I mean, at the end of the day, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I find it interesting. I don't feel like it's dragging. I don't feel like it's moving at a snail's pace. I've enjoyed all the introductions, all the interactions, but I do understand that, you know, some people are feeling, you know, a little like, oh man, I don't know. And I feel like episode 6, like, even if it's still slower than what you were expecting, if you've made it up to this point, yeah, watch episode 6, because the characters are all getting into one location. And it does feel to me that this is the type of show that by episode 12, that's when shit's really going to start popping off. And that's why I hope we do get to see a season 2, because, I mean, while we may have a few fun fights from here on out, at the same time, we're still in that setup stage, and I don't know if that's going to be enough for a lot of people. For me, I'm really impressed with this. I really like this show. I've been complimenting it since episode 1, and while not every episode has been a 10 out of 10, there's been a couple of episodes that have been pretty damn close for what the show's been attempting to be. But at its very worst, it's kept me interested with these character introductions, and I find each of the sets of characters very fascinating. And I really don't know if you throw any of these characters at each other. I mean, you can get some interpretations of fights that will happen based on the opening, but still, it's anyone's guess on who truly would win in any given fight. Like, I don't think Ishura is perfect by any means. I don't think it's anywhere close to being my favorite anime of this season, but it is a show I legitimately enjoy watching, and is a show that I'm always excited to see where it's gonna go. Now that character groups are all very much in the same location, all the introductions are seemingly out of the way, all those interesting establishing plot points that we had in the first 5 episodes establishing their characters, now they're starting to intertwine with each other, and by the end of this episode, you can see how crazy and cool it becomes. There's a lot of mystery, a lot of riddles almost that we're trying to solve as we're building this big battle royale isekai, and I think they're doing a pretty good job, but that's just me anyway. Let me know what you've been thinking though over the past couple of weeks, because especially now that the introductions are out of the way, what did you think of the first official episode with everyone kind of joining in on one location? Let me know down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course ring that bell, and like I mentioned, we have a full live reaction over on my Patreon. And hey, while you're over there, I'll also give you a video shoutout. So today we have Chapel Rune, Link Hustos 15, Dexter Boston Terrier Dog, Casey Holscher, Sleazy Frog, and Peacock. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care and have a good one.